G'day everyone and a Merry Christmas to all. In this tutorial we are making a Christmas tree. Something that I've been wanting to do for a while, many years, and never got around to it. But hey, now's the time, right? So this is the finished result that you can see in front of you right now. I put mine in a full scene, complete with fireplace and a house and everything like that. We're not going to be doing all of that in this tutorial, simply because it would take forever. So what we're going to be doing instead, if I show you, this is the finished scene here, by the way, if you were curious what it actually looked like inside. This is it. But what I'm going to be showing you in this tutorial is how to make this scene right here. So just the tree in and of itself. So you can use that however you wish. Put it in your own scene. Make a Christmas card out of it. It's a good idea. Make a Christmas card. Send it to your relatives, do whatever you want with it. Have a blast. So that's it. So I'm going to go ahead now, jump over to a new scene in Blender, and let's get started. So we're going to start by deleting the default cube, of course, and this is where we're going to put our Christmas tree. All right. Now the Christmas tree, we're not actually going to model or do anything like that. We're going to be using an add-on. Okay, and the add-on actually comes built with Blender. So if you go to File, User Preferences, then go to Add-ons, the add-on that we're looking for is called the Sapling add-on. So if you just type in Sap, you can see here it is right now. And if I just click that little checkbox, it's now enabled. Now, the way that you summon the add-on is by hitting Shift-A, and then underneath Curve, which is bizarrely where it is, you have an option here called Add Tree. Okay, so go ahead and click Add Tree, and now you have in your viewport something that somewhat resembles something like a tree. Okay, it's a skeleton looking thing, and the reason it's a skeleton is that this add-on is actually just a curve. If you go into edit mode, I won't because it'll remove all the options. It'll actually look like a curve. Okay, so the way that you actually adjust the shape and size and whatever of this tree is by hitting T, bringing up the toolbar, and you have all of your options right here in front of you. So we've got our basic curve, looking tree, skeleton looking thing. The thing you probably want to do first of all is enable bevel, which actually makes it look like a tree. Okay, still very empty, but it at least resembles a tree. Okay, now this add-on, it's great, but there's a lot of settings. So you can see all these settings here. It's probably making you scared, and I know I freaked out when I first saw it. It's a great add-on. It's very powerful, but it is there is a lot of room for improvement, I'll tell you that much. So if any developers listening, you want to sort of improve this, that'd be great. There's not really any labels for these, so that would be nice. But if you just listen to me, I will walk you through what you need to know to become self-sufficient using this add-on. Okay. Right, now, the first thing you want to pay attention to when you're creating a tree is the actual physical size of it, like in the real world. How big is your tree? Okay, so obviously there's different trees of different sizes, and how big is this in the real world? Well, we actually don't know. Well, if we go to the scene settings and enable a unit type, of course I'm going to use metric because I'm Australian, and you go to the dimensions, you can see here on the Z dimensions, it is 16 meters. Okay, so that's far too big for a Christmas tree. So you want to adjust the scale of this value right here. I'm going to adjust this all the way down to 2. And then, to go even further, I'm going to set this, this is the scale variation. I'm going to set that to 0. Okay, so we don't want any randomness because we're not creating duplicate trees or anything like that. Okay, so we've now got scale of 2. And now if you go back, for some reason it keeps turning off the units, almost like it's trying to tell me something. You can see that it's 2.2 meters high, which is just about the right size for a Christmas tree, if you ask me. Awesome. Okay, now the next thing you want to do is you want to decide the shape of your tree, which this is probably the easiest part of the whole add-on because these names are very self-explanatory. They just adjust the overall shape of the branches that you've got in your tree. So you can have a lot of fun with this, but the one, of course, that we're looking for is the conical tree, which basically is larger at the bottom and then thinner at the top, like a Christmas tree, right? So, yeah, let's dive in and start looking at some of those scary settings. Now, the thing you're probably getting a headache over is that there's so many of these values. But if you just understand sort of how it works, you'll see that it's actually quite easy to just to grasp. Basically, the sapling tree add-on works based on levels. So levels of branches. Now this is the level count that we've got right here. So by default, it's got 2 levels. So those levels are the tree trunk itself, that's level 1. And then after that, you've got level 2, which becomes these branches outside here. So let's go down to level 1. You can see it's just the trunk. Then we've got level 2. And then if you want branches, thanks for that, Adobe, I don't want an update. If you go up to level 3, then you get branches out of those branches. And then of course, if you go up to level 4, then you get branches out of those branches. So you get like finer and finer looking branches. And that's basically how you use this add-on. For this actual Christmas tree, we're going to use a value of 3, but just to keep things fast in the 3D viewport, I'm going to leave it at 2 just for now, so we can just focus on these ones right here. Okay, now, why there are 4 of each value here is because each of these values here will adjust each one of these levels. So if we are adjusting level 2, which is these branches right here, if we increase the number of branches here, you can see that we're now getting those branches. And if I was wanting to, I don't know, if I had 3 levels, for example, and then I increase this level here, then of course I would be increasing the 4th level of branches. So you get even finer ones right there. I think I may have actually just actually screwed up the computer. That's the problem. When you do that little scrolly thing, you don't know how far it's going to go, and then it just goes too far and your computer crashes. Okay, so evidently Blender crashes when you go to too higher amounts. So don't do the click and drag option. That is not good for this add-on, all right? So I just had to restart Blender. But anyways, as I was saying, each one of these values here, going from top to bottom, pertains to one of these levels of branches up here. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, okay? So, so that's why there are 4 of every single value in every single setting, because it's each level of branches. So don't let that scare you. It's just how it is. So now that you know that, it should be a lot more easier on your eyes to sort of, I don't know, distill any of this information that's presented forth. What am I talking about? The first thing you probably want to do is clear up this big empty patch at the bottom of your tree, okay? And you do that in the branch splitting section where it's got base size. I don't know why it's in branch split. All right, I'm not going to complain. Base size, that's the amount of this 0.4 where it's an empty trunk. So I want this to be 0.1, and that of course is going to make the branches 10% at the bottom empty, right? So so there we go. That's cool. And the number of branches that I'm going to use for the second level is 170. Okay, so that's quite a fair amount there. But one thing that you want to do with these branches is you want to make them split, because one thing that I've noticed from having a look at reference photos, which by the way I highly recommend you do if you are at a computer right now, go online and have a look at some reference photos. So these are some ones that I've pulled off Flickr that have got the Creative Commons on it, so I can actually show it to you without getting sued. Just to sort of prove that there's no right or wrong shape for a Christmas tree. What is this? What is going on there? Yeah, this is the sort of one that I was going for with my tree, okay? And this is what it looks like up close, okay? It's just so I can get the detail on it. This is the sort of one I'm going for, but basically there's no right or wrong. I mean, some of them are just ridiculous. This one looks like an IED just went off in their lounge room or something. This one looks like it decided to grow horizontally. This one was clearly stuffed into the back of a Prius. Yeah, all right, cool. So keep whatever. Just, what was I saying? We need to split the branches, all right? So have a look at some reference photos online and you'll see that the branches split a lot, okay? So the way that you do that is over here on this in the segment splits. Now, because this is the second level of branches that we want there to be splits on, we adjust the second level value right here. So the value that I'm going to use is 0.3, okay? And as you can see, it's now split those branches. Okay, but one thing it doesn't tell you in this add-on, you sort of have to figure it out yourself, is that this segment split value here is also heavily influenced by the curve resolution. So down here underneath branch growth, you've got 4 values, and for each value, of course, is the resolution of each branch level. Okay, so this is the like how many kinks in each of the branches, like the number, right? So the higher you set that to, the smoother the branch is going to look. So if I set this to 13, the branches are going to be smoother, and you will notice there is a lot more splitting going on. It is splitting like crazy, which is actually what we want. It actually looks pretty cool right now. So keep that in mind. It's something that isn't explained anywhere in the add-on. Maybe it is online, I have no idea. But segment splits, it's influenced by this value here. Anyways. Okay, so we got the splitting. Great. Now the next thing you want to do is you want to influence the down angle. Okay. Now there's a down angle variation, which is basically this value here randomized. Okay, now this angle is basically it's the angle at which the branches are coming out of this main trunk here. So currently it's coming out at a 60-degree angle, and then this is a variation of minus 50 degrees. So if I set this to 0, you'll get it looking a lot more formal looking, and you can see that each one is coming out at 60 degrees. And just to show how it looks at 90 degrees, you can see they're coming out completely horizontally. Okay, so that's just how it all works, right? So the value we're going to use is a value of 60. Okay, and the down angle variation is actually no, sorry, I'm going to use a value of 70. All right. I've got 2 monitors here, and I'm actually just comparing it to my finished tree because there's so many settings to remember. We are going to use some variation. I'm going to use minus 20, and that's just going to ensure that the branches, there's a little bit of variation. They're not all exactly as they are, and that'll make it look a little bit nicer. Okay, so that's pretty much it. There's the rotation angle as well, which is basically how many times it's like rotated around the branch, around the actual trunk, which isn't really all that useful to us. I sort of gave mine a bit of a variation of 50, just to sort of make it look a little bit more choppy, a little bit more realistic. And the branch growth, if we head on over there, the important one is the curvature. So this is the curvature of the ends of the branches. Like you can see it's sort of curling, like going upwards. Like if I set this to be minus, what did I just do this then? Minus like 90. You'll see that the branches are like really curling upwards, okay? Which is ridiculous. So the value I'm going to use for this is minus 30. And one other thing you can do is you can actually increase the back curvature. So the back curvature is basically, it's curling it, but it's curling it in the opposite direction. So it'll give it kind of like an S look. So if I give this a value of, let's say 30, you can see it sort of makes the branches look a little bit heavy. Like they've got sort of, I don't know, some weight to them. So I used a value of 20 for mine, and I found that to be pretty good. So you've got some curvature going upwards and then some back curvature going the other way, making it look like there's a little bit of weight to it, and it looks pretty good. Awesome. Okay, I'm just going to just compare that with my notes over here on on the other screen. All right, good. Everything is pretty much in order. So that is level 2. Now we're going to move up to level 3. Now, why are we using level 3? Because it already looks pretty good at like level 2. The reason that we're using level 3 is that if you look at reference photos of actual Christmas trees, you'll notice that there's like almost like a little like a bunch of what would you call it, like spokes sticking out of each branch. I'll go over here. You can see this is sort of a close-up of them, but they just sort of like stick out, like really tiny sort of small ones, but they all just sort of like blah, and they all just explode out of each branch. Okay, so we want there to be some branches for the 3rd level. Okay, the number of branches I'm going to use is actually 60. It's quite high, so yeah, it's quite high, but it will give us some nice looking results. And the first thing you want to do is you want to reduce the length of these miniature branches. So I'm going to reduce them to be 0.3. Okay, let's just wait for that to load, and that will it'll look a lot nicer then. So basically we're now getting really small short ones sort of coming out of there. You also probably want to increase the resolution of those ones because they're looking pretty spiky at current whatever. So something like that. Okay, so they'll get, okay, it's got a bit of, yeah. And the curvature, I'm going to use the same curvature as these standard branches over here, just to keep it fair. Let me just see here. All right, and the variation, I don't want them to look too crazy at the end. I'm just going to reduce the variation to be 50, so it's not too chaotic at the end there. And one other thing that you want to play with, but you have to be careful with it, is the length variation. So this is the variation of each branch length. Okay, so it's randomizing each of the branches' lengths. It's a very important value. However, you will notice that if you go to your add-ons, it's got this little, whatchamacallit, warning icon, and it says, warning, length parameters may cause errors. So if you set these too high, you'll get an error message, which you obviously don't want. So I found that setting these to 0.08 is safe. You'll notice that when I do this, the second level branches will look more choppy. There you go. So you can see you've got some short ones and some long ones. So basically this value will help us make a tree that actually looks real, as opposed to one that just was store-bought, made out of plastic. Yeah, so let's just wait for them to load. There we go. Okay, so now they're at like different lengths. Okay, awesome. That's pretty much it. I'm just gonna make sure that everything is as it should be. Just go over here. Oh, one other thing, you want to change the branch radius ratio, which is the amount that each level of branch scales down in size. So the default is 1.2. The higher you set that to, the smaller the next level of branch will become. So I found that a value of 1.4, so slightly smaller than what it is currently. It'll make the branches look a little bit thinner, and it'll work for a tree, and it'll look a lot nicer. That's what I think. I don't know why I'm talking so weird today. Yeah, great. So I think that's pretty much it. Let me just check everything else. Oh, there's one other value as well. The vertical attraction. It's the branch upward attraction. See, there's so many different values that sort of like conflict with each other. It can sort of be a nightmare. But I set mine to be 0.1. It'll adjust it very, very slightly. I'm assuming this will adjust the leaves a lot more, but in this case, it's adjusting the branches slightly anyway. The leaves, by the way, if you're wondering, we're not actually going to be using leaves. You can use leaves if you want. You click show leaves. I'm not brave enough to actually check that because I don't want it to crash on me. But we're not using leaves for this because we're going to be using the particle system to generate those tiny little furs on each of the branches. Okay, so we've got it. Now, if you were to just use this tree as it is and then realize, oh, I wanted to change one of those settings, it's not quite right, there'd be a problem because all of those settings that you've just changed aren't saved, they're completely cleared, and they're irrecoverable, if that's a word. So what you want to do is you want to save this as a preset so that you can go back to it if something happens. So the way that you do this is by just typing in a name. Let's call it Christmas Tree Tutorial 2 because I've got loads of them, and I'm going to hit export preset. Okay, and then once you do that, basically if you want to import it again in the future, all you do is you click that load preset. You can see how many I've got here, and then you just select it and it'll bring back all the settings that you've done in the past. Okay, so there we go. That's it. That is the tree in and of itself. Now we're going to go ahead and get into adding the pine needles. All right, so as I explained at the start, the pine needles are going to be generated or going to be made using a particle system. But before we do that, we want to separate the trunk from the rest of the branches because obviously we don't want there to be a furry tree trunk. That would look very, very odd. So if you go into edit mode, first thing you'll notice is that this isn't an actual mesh. It's actually just curves with a bevel on top of it. So what we can do is we just select this bottom handle right here, then hit L. It's going to select everything that's connected to it, which is just the trunk. And then if I hit P, that is now its own separate object right here. And whilst we're at it, now that we have the trunk selected just by itself, you can see that it's actually like it's a squarish looking shape, and that's because the bevel resolution that we gave it was 0. So over here in the curve settings, because it is a curve object, if we increase that resolution to be let's go level 2, you can see that we now have a smoother looking trunk. You can go higher, maybe go level 3, that might be nicer. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same actually with our branches, but I'm just going to go to level 1. And the reason why you want to go to any level, although you can't really see the detail in the final shot, is that the pine needles are going to be coming out of the direction of these faces right here once it's a mesh. So if it was just a square, then you would get some very weird, obviously fake looking pine needles, okay? So, yay, awesome. So we've got the trunk separate, and we've got the branches ready to go. So you go over here to the particle settings. And oh no, it's not there, is it? There's no particle settings. And that is because this is a curve object. So you want to convert this to a mesh. So you hit Alt-C and then select Mesh from Curve. Ta-da! Now it is an actual mesh. Okay, awesome. So now you've actually got some particle settings. So first thing you want to do, of course, add a particle system and set the type to hair. All right, and then I'm going to check advanced, as I always do, and we want to change all of these values. No, a lot of them. The first one is random, okay, because you don't want them to be affected by the vertices or anything like that. The next one you want to adjust is, of course, the length of them, because at its default state, it's far too big, obviously, and you can't see them at the moment, but they are actually quite long. So the next thing you want to adjust is the amount of pine needles. Now, the amount that I actually used for my final render was 900,000. So if I go to that value, you'll see that it's very, very thick. Now, you don't have to use that many for your final render. I got away with 500,000, I think, for some of my other renders I did, and it looked pretty much just as fine. So if your computer is crashing a lot, you just need to adjust this amount to suit, but I recommend 900,000. And just so that your computer doesn't overload whilst we're playing with these settings, you can see it's already slow at the moment. Go down to the display settings here, and I'll just set this to be 10% of the actual particles that are going to render. There we go. So now it's actually a lot faster to move around. Okay, so the normal, let's turn that down even more. Let's go 0.001, okay? So now it should be really, really small, okay? If you zoom right in there, you should be able to see it. Now, the point of doing this is that if we have a look at our reference photos over here, you can see that they're very densely packed, and they're very, very short and fat. So this is this is a different type, and obviously than this one over here, but these are just some reference photos to keep in mind. I'm going to go for this style because this is pretty much the typical Christmas tree style. So yeah, so we want them to be pretty short compared to the branch sizes, and short and fat. Okay, so I want them to be slightly random. So they're coming out at not a perfect angle, but slightly random as well. And then as well as that, let me actually see. Hang on. No, actually, random might not be a good idea. Okay, let's set it to instead. Yeah, let's set this value here. Let's make this just a little bit longer. Okay, so okay. All right, that should actually be more suitable for this this size of the tree. Okay, that's good. All right, so the one after that you want to adjust is down here underneath Brownian. If you give it just a slight amount of Brownian, what you'll find is that each one of these pine needles has a slight little bend to it, and you'll find that it just makes the whole tree look a lot thicker, because you've got them, instead of all like lining up perfectly, they'll be slightly sort of different to each other, and it'll look a lot nicer, which is great. Okay, so if we let me just have a look here. The children's, everything else is pretty good. The one thing we want to adjust is getting into the actual appearance of these needles. Okay, so this is where we define how thick we actually want the needles to be. So the value that I found worked well is if I set the thickness and the tip to both be 0.1. I find that gives it a very nice look, and also set the shape to thick instead of ribbon, so that it actually is like a three-dimensional sort of shape to the hair, and I find that looks really good. And we're not at the stage ready to render yet because we haven't got any materials. So the first thing you want to do is you want to actually give the branch, the actual tree branch itself, a material. So I'm just going to call this branch, and I'm going to make this a sort of make it a pale gray sort of brown color like that. Okay, and just so that I can see that it's working, I'll set the viewport color to be the same. Okay, so there we go. So that's the branch color. Now we need to create another material, and this one is going to be the furs, or the needles, whatever you want to call them, okay? Now this one we're actually going to do a little bit of special looking material, because what we want is we want the light to actually be able to shine through the needles, because they will be transparent in like a sunlight, and we also want them to be slightly reflective, meaning they slightly glossy, because if you have a look at this reference photo here, you can see here where my cursor is, there is actually some light that is being shined off of these needles, so they're not completely diffused. Pretty much nothing in real life is completely diffused. Just a little tip for you. So first things first, let's make it a little bit glossy. All right, so let's just move this over. Let's just go full screen, all right, so we can actually see what we're doing. I'm going to add a mix shader, drag this in, and there we go. Now to get the translucent looking effect, what I'm going to do is add in a, guess what, translucent shader. And then to combine the two so that they are affecting each other, basically, use an add shader, which is pretty much the only use I've ever find for an add shader is when you're using something that you need to be translucent. So the diffuse value, that's going to be the main color of the pine needles. So this color that you give it right here is actually quite important. If you go like too green, it looks too fake, looks like very store-bought. So you want to sort of go like a mix between a green and a yellow. You don't want to go full saturation either. You want to leave it somewhere about there. And then you want to just turn down this value here to be something which looks a little bit darkish. So I think around about a value of 0.2 works pretty well. Saturation, let's go 0.8 on the saturation. That's pretty good. And the translucent, I'm going to use the color drop tool and select the same color, but because translucent, we don't want it to be the exact brightness as the actual front of the needles. We want it to be a little bit darker. So I'm just going to make it a little bit darker like that. The gloss is perfectly fine as it is, but I will just increase the roughness so it's a little bit, maybe even more. Yeah, okay. And I'm going to set this mix shader back to 0.1, so we get 10% of the actual gloss coming through on the needles. Excellent. Now to make the particle system actually use that new material, what you need to do is go down here underneath the render settings and just click where it says render material 1, set that to 2, and it's now using that new material that we've just created. And if I set that to a green color so that we can actually tell the difference, go in and out of edit. I don't know why you have to do that to actually see the color, but there you go. That color is horrendous actually. It's really a terrible looking color, but anyways, you get the point. So that's pretty much it. It would be ready to render right now, but what I'm going to do before we do that is actually give this tree trunk an actual texture. And in order to do that, we need to do some UV unwrapping. So if you go into edit mode, you'll notice that the tree trunk is still a curve, because we only made the branches a mesh. So with the tree trunk selected, Alt-C, mesh from curve, and we need to do some UV unwrapping, okay? So let's just make this all by itself by hitting number pad /, and on its backside, somewhere along here, I'm gonna make a seam. Not a scene, a seam, okay? Right there, okay? And then if you go into UV image editor, hit unwrap, you should get something that looks like this. And then if you just scale this up, what you'll find is that it should fit that grid like that, and that's gonna be good, because what I'm gonna do now is use a tileable texture, which is actually a texture which is only included inside the Nature Academy, but I'm going to let you guys use it as well. It's available underneath this video. If you're watching it on Blender Guru, you can download the texture. So we're going to be using, let's go open image, texture pack, tree bark, tiled. It's this one right here called Black Rough, okay? This is the texture. Now you might think that this is the wrong sort of texture. You think that a conifer would be a brown sort of tree trunk texture, but if you have a look at reference photos, you'll find that it's usually a whitish sort of gray color. So this one actually I found to be, it works really well for Christmas trees. Okay, cool. So with that done, let's just give it a material. Let's go image texture, And let's just select that right there. And that's pretty much all you need to do for the tree trunk. Such a small part, but the bottom needs to be visible, so yeah. All right, so we're getting into the rendering part now. Isn't that exciting? Finally. Let's just bring this camera in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to invert these the X and the Y. So I'm going to make the X 1080 and the Y 1920. So I've just made it widescreen but vertical. So basically what you get when you film with an iPhone, right? Because obviously it's a vertical tree, not a widescreen tree, right? So yeah, that's good. Now we want to give it some lighting and a background. So I'm going to give this default, I'm going to take this default lamp and I'm going to make it a sun lamp. And I'll give it a, I'm going to leave the shadow size as it is because I want it to look sort of slightly diffused. And by diffused, I mean sort of like an overcast looking sky, okay? So something like that should be pretty good. I'm sort of coming in at that sort of an angle. So the shadow, there'll be a little bit of a shadow on this side. That should look pretty nice. And the strength of it, I'm just going to go with a strength of, let's just try 2, all right? Now the world, the background color, this is important because you want it to look like like there's a little bit of a skylighting to it, okay? So let's just increase that and go a slightly bluish color like that. And then we'll just turn the strength down. Okay, I'm sort of winging it here. I'm hoping that this will come out looking nice. All right, now for the background, we just want to create a very typical curved surface looking background. And the way that you do that is simply by just making a wall like that and then hitting Control 1 to give it a subsurf modifier. But of course, when you do that, you get part of the floor sort of curling upwards too soon. So just create a loop cut like right there, and that should be fine. And now let's just go to smooth shading. Yeah, let's go level 2. There we go. And da-da. Awesome. And I think we are ready to render. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, I haven't even saved it yet. Let's go ahead and save it. And let's see how it looks with just the tree by itself. And then hopefully we can get into adding some decorations. All right, so it hasn't finished rendering, but I can see that the lamp isn't bright enough. I was trying to wing it, hoping it'd sort of pan out, but the sun lamp I'm going to increase to a value of 5, and yeah, let's try that again and see how it looks now. All right, there we go. That's the finished render. Looks like a pretty nice looking tree, and it's pretty much ready for decorations at this point. If you wanted to though, you will notice if you zoom in here, you have like these weird looking little furry looking, like just almost looks like they're suspended in midair, these leaves, because they're so big and thick and they're just like hanging out there. It just looks really unnatural. Like you can see as you go up the edges here, and it's only on the edges of the branches. And I wish I knew there was a way that you could like adjust the particle systems according to the thickness of the branch, but you can't, as far as I know. But I found there's a way that you can do it if you are interested in it. I'll just do it now very quickly. I'll do like the lazy man's version of it. If you just make a vertex group and then hit assign at weight paint value of 1, right? And just so that this actually speeds up and we can actually move things along, turn off the particle system. If you go into Control Tab, this weight paint mode, everything's red. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the edges. I'm going to make them blue, essentially. Okay, or not. Actually, I won't go 100. I won't go, yeah, like completely 0. I'll go 0.1. Okay, so that they have some. And basically, by painting these edges, what it'll do is it will affect the length of the particles, so that there will be shorter particles at these wherever it's blue, essentially. So this is, as you can see, it's a really easy way to do it. You do sort of, I mean, I would recommend doing it with more care. I'm doing it with the same level of care that I would when my wife tells me to to do the washing up before I leave to go to work in the morning, I just spray everything with water and leg it. But yeah, I recommend doing it with a little bit more care than I'm doing it right now, because you'll get better results. But this is essentially it. And then if you want to, like, you can do the other side, because you'll notice that on this side, they're still red. So, you know, you can do up there if you want. That's real lazy. Anyways, then once you've done that, you go back to the particle system. Actually, let's just turn it on so you can actually see the results. And if we zoom in on the edges here, let's just watch as we do this, right? See, we're going to learn something here. Check this out. If we go to the vertex groups, and then where it's got length, just click the name of that vertex group, and bam, some of them have become smaller. Some of them have not, but in weight paint mode, these are all blue or whatever, so I don't see what their problem is. Oh yeah, you can see they just probably haven't been painted enough. I think you have to paint on both sides for some reason, or maybe you can paint. Maybe I should have turned on the X-ray. Whatever. Anyways, that's how you do it, guys, if you want to make it look nicer on the edges. Okay, so next step, Christmas decorations. Ta-da! Finally moving on. The first thing that we are going to do is add in the Christmas lights. Now, I used to think this was a huge job, but it's actually relatively easy. I thought it was huge, but it's relatively meh. It's okay. So the way you do it is you add in a Bezier curve. All right. Now, this Bezier curve is going to become the chord of the Christmas lights. Okay. Now, the best way I found to do this is by splitting the view in half, one looking at it front on and one looking at it from the top. And then what you do is you grab these handles and you position it, rotate it, you know, all the way up the tree. So I then take that point there and I move it up. Okay. And I do that, as I said. Oh no, I accidentally clicked the tree. That's right, I forgot that. I've inverted my mouse. And for some reason, I inverted my clicking for obvious reasons. You guys know why. And for some reason, it does weird things with the control click. Anyways, you just control click, okay, on as you go up the tree like this, and then you just, this is where the lights are going to be essentially. So we haven't modeled the lights yet, but it's pretty easy to do. So yeah, we just do this all the way up to the top. Okay, so far so good. You'll notice that it's kind of hard to actually see the edges of these curves here. So one thing I did was I just went to the themes, and in the 3D view, if you just turn the wire edit to white, it's a lot nicer to see. And by the way, sneak peek, as far as I know, this is going to be the future of Blender. They are adjusting the default colors of Blender's theme so that it's actually more readable, because currently there are several areas of Blender where it's a pain to use because it's so hard to see what's going on. Like this example right now, there's dark on dark, and it's just it doesn't work. So yeah. Anyways, so I'm setting it to white, but yeah, it's up to you. Okay, right now the camera's in the way. That's great. All right, goodbye camera. Hide you. Now play the game of where is the Christmas light thing. Oh, for goodness sake. Come on. I want to select it. Where did it go? Oh, that's it right there. I click it. Yeah, there we go. That was lucky. Okay. Gee. There are some things where it's like, you think about something in Blender like, this task should be easier. And then you put together a proposal. And then you realize that not everyone agrees with you. No, it's not that. It's that it's such a hard thing to something sounds like an answer on the surface. It's one thing I realized, like being in the user interface discussion group, there are some things where it's like, that sounds like a great idea. And then you think about like, and then somebody else will jump in and go, but what about this situation? And then you go, oh yeah, that doesn't really work, does it? So I can understand how Blender's interface is difficult in places because it requires thought, a lot of thought, which not everyone wants to do, understandably. Whatever. All right, I'm going to move this to a separate layer. I should have done that at the start so that it's easier to actually grab it in the future. And what I'm going to do now is this resolution here, you can see like it's like jagged. So let's increase this to be like 60, so it's a lot smoother. And I want to give it a bevel. So set the fill to full, and then the bevel depth, let's just increase that to be something. You shouldn't really have to see it. Yeah, something like that. And then increase the resolution as well. That's like the smoothness of the actual curve. There we go. Sorry, my phone is going mental. My wife's texting me. I'll give it a material. I'm going to call it Chord, right? And it's just going to be a mix of obviously the diffuse and obviously the glossy. Probably the most used material type that I ever do is mixing those two together. That's great. That's the Chord. Excellent. So now we need there to actually be some lights. How do we do this? Well, it is quite simple. First of all, set your cursor to selected, so to the origin point of this curve. Now this is very important because if you don't do things exactly as I'm about to show you, then you will get some terrible looking results, trust me. What we're going to do now is model some very, very low poly, basic looking Christmas lights. And by low poly, I mean really low poly. So I'm going to get a cylinder and I'm going to use like 8 vertices. Actually, let's go 12. Yeah, give it a little something, all right? And I'm going to scale it right down. And I want this to be the actual size of a... you know, the black part of a Christmas light bulb. I'm not sure what you call that, but like the actual stem, that's what this is right now. So I'm comparing it to the rest, like the size of the tree, because you don't want there to be like these thick, like what looks like black prods, like sort of sticking out of the tree, because it'll look really fake. So yeah, something like that, and that sort of length. That's a little bit too long. Okay, that's good right there. Okay, and then at that point, I'm going to add in an icosphere, which is huge at the moment. But I'm going to scale this down. Now, this icosphere is going to be the actual light bulb of the light itself. Okay, so I'm going to set this to be about here, and I'm just going to grab this one point right here. I'll just turn on proportional editing, and I'm just going to drag it out. Oh, I got to scale this way in because it's working so small, right? All right, just gonna pull that out, and this is gonna be our Christmas light. Okay, it's really dodgy looking, but trust me, it's so far away from the camera that it really will not matter. But I'm gonna give it the material of Chord, which is just black at the moment, and then I'm gonna give another material, and this one is going to be, let's call it Bulb, and let's set this emission 5. And one thing that I'm going to do, this is it's kind of cool. Maybe you didn't know this existed. For light bulbs, like in the real world, it's measured in Kelvin, like the color temperature of actual physical lights. And you can do that in Blender by adding in a black body node. Now, if you don't know what the temperature of this, you know, what temperature something should be, type in Kelvin scale or Kelvin meter into Google Images, and you will see the different values. But basically, around about 2100, that's the value of a candle. Okay, and then the higher you go, like 8,000, that's like an overcast sky, and you go higher than that and it's like starts getting blue or whatever. Anyways, the value I'm going to use is around about 2,500, which is approximately the value which humans are most comfortable with, something around about that. And anyways, so that'll give it a warmish sort of look. Now I'm going to select just the bulb there, and I'm going to assign it to that. Okay, and let's just set it. There we go. Okay, excellent. All right, so we've got one bulb. Great. Now, because if I was to just make this go all the way up this this look, whatever looking thing, what would happen is that you would have like, it would look as though it's coming out at the same angle all the way up the tree, which looks obviously pretty fake. So what I'm going to do is in edit mode, I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go into top view mode as well. Let's have a look at it here. And I'm going to hit Shift D, and then I'm just going to move it over one little snap, right? And then I'm going to rotate this. Whoops. That's something I need to do. Move the cursor to be just at that point right there, and then set the rotate point to be 3D cursor. And then I'll rotate that by, turn off proportional editing, rotate that by 90 degrees. And then I'm going to do that exact same step again a couple more times. Okay? And this might not make much sense now, but you'll see it in just a moment. Okay? All right, so we've got some bulbs which look pretty weird. Now, what I'm going to do now is add a modifier, curve. And the curve that I'm going to use is, of course, the curve that we've just created. And there we go. Look at that. So our bulbs are now snapped to that curve location. One other important thing you want to do is you want to apply the scale of these these little light bulbs here. It's very important that you do that. Otherwise, it's going to look pretty weird. And then before that curve, because we want it to repeat all the way up this stem here, I've added in an array modifier. And instead of setting the count, actually I will just sort of move that like that. So you can like increase this count, and that'll like go all the way up. But an easier way to do it is to just set fit curve, and then just select the name of that curve. And look at that. There we go. We have our Christmas tree with loads of lights on it. It's probably light overkill. I think I got too many lights. Somebody on Facebook or Twitter said that there should be more lights on my tree. So I'm going overboard now, but that's the general gist of it. Okay, that's how you do it. Light bulbs, yay! One other thing you might want to do as well with the bulb, if you give it a pass index of 1, and then in the render layer settings, if you enable a material index, what that will enable you to do is to apply a glow or glare effect to just these bulbs without it affecting anything else. So I'll do that later in the compositor, but just giving you some options now so that you can think in the future, whatever. So selecting this chord here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate it. And what this chord is now going to become is our tinsel. Okay, so let's just bring back our tree. Okay, and I'm just going to rotate this entire thing so that it's like this. Okay, and this is going to become the tinsel train, or the tinsel, whatever you want to call it. How can we rotate this? Something like that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay. So yeah, the tinsel is going to be created using the particle system as well. So essentially what you need to do now is deform this however you want, because we need to actually give this a, we need to convert this to a mesh. So it's important that you get whatever sort of shapes or, you know, little variations in the tinsel. You need to do that now rather than try and do it later, because once you've converted it to a mesh, it's obviously going to be a lot harder to play with. So just keep that in mind. So I found that to make it look sort of natural, if you try and like hang it over branches and stuff, I found that it looks the best. So I'm sort of trying to do my best here, but something like that should be fine. And then you probably also want to turn down the resolution of this, because you don't want it to be too visible, like the actual inner part of the tinsel. That's good. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt-C, convert that to a mesh. And now, here comes the magic. We're giving another particle system, this one hair as well. I'm going to click Advanced, and where it's got normal, this is where you set the length of that, obviously. So let's go 0.01, and let's just focus just on the tinsel. That's pretty good, actually. 0.01, that's not too bad. But I will, because the tinsel, it can be a little bit more crazy in its shape than the actual furs on the tree or whatever. I can then turn up the Brownian as well, and the Brownian's going to help it look really nice. Yeah, it'll make it look like some actual tinsel. So that's pretty cool. All right, now the amount of tinsel, you can play with. But I think, let me just check on my other monitor over here. You can't see what I'm doing. Let me just check it. Come on. Load, computer, load. I'm going to tell you the exact amount of tinsel that I used. 15,000. Okay, so let's just do that. 15,000 tinsels. Now, the important thing is that down here underneath the cycles hair rendering, the shape is by default set to thick, but I'm going to use ribbons. Why? Because tinsel is a ribbon, right? So yeah, you can make use of that. It'll also be faster to render, so that's a bonus. And for the root and the tip, I'm going to do the exact same thing, scaling it down to 0.1 of 0.1 or whatever. You could do that with this scaling meter, but I don't know why it's already set so low. I don't know, some of these settings are just weird. Anyways, that's good. So now we need to give it a material, okay? So I can actually just delete this material, and I'm going to give it an entirely new one, and it's going to be glossy. And I'm not going to do anything else with it because it's tinsel. Tinsel should be like silver. Nice, furry looking silver. So that's looking pretty good. So with our lights, with our tinsel, I'm going to go ahead and give this a nice old render right now, and we'll see how it looks. All right, so this is the render that we've got after 3 minutes of rendering. And actually, I mean, it's not too bad. It obviously would require a lot more tweaking before it starts to look nice. But that's one of those things that you guys get to do at home. But I'm not going to do in the video because it's tedious. So obviously pull this tinsel out a bit so that it's not so wrapped up in there. Probably decrease the amount of lights maybe. I don't know. And sort of make it, if you made it hang from the branches more, that takes a bit of time, you know, like tweaking the curves so that they're hanging from individual branches, but it does look nicer. So that's one of those things that I recommend doing, and it pays off. But go nuts with it. One final thing to do. Actually, no, we got 2 final things to do. We've got to add a star, and we've got to add some baubles. I hate that word, but let's start with the baubles, right? So it's pretty easy to do. If we just add in a sphere, UV sphere like this, scale it down, and let's use the metric system again to actually, it keeps turning it off for some reason. I have no idea why. To sort of figure out like how big one of these things should be. So I think 10 centimeters is overkill. I think about 7 centimeters. That's probably about the right size. And let's have a look. No, that's the wrong size. You want to have a look at it in comparison to the rest of the tree, don't you? So yeah, I think that's pretty good. That's a good value right there. All right, and then what you want to do is set the origin point to be at the tip of it, just in case you want to rotate or anything like that. Set this to smooth shading, and we want to give it a killer looking material, don't we? So I'm going to go to the node editor, add a new material, and this one's really easy at the start, and then it gets more complicated. You'll see what I mean. So if we go to the we're going to add a very basic bauble looking shader, so it's like heavy gloss with a little bit of diffuse. So I'm going to add in a mix shader, and the cool thing is you can actually see it right in the 3D viewport over here. I mean, baubles are so exactly what is already here. I mean, it's just almost impossible to screw up. I'm going to increase the roughness of it to be like way more than I normally would. No, 0.3 is pretty good. And then I'll set that factor to be something like that. That's 0.6. Okay, that's good. Now the diffuse, what you want to do is really, you want to give it a color. So I'm going to, and this is where your color knowledge will come in handy. So if you haven't studied up on color, I recommend it. But basically, you want to choose complementary colors. The color of the tree is green, and opposite that on the color wheel is a purple color, obviously. So yeah, so what you want to do is you want to, for the diffuse color, you want to give it a dark, your color, and then make it darker. And then for the gloss, you just want to get that same color and then just increase the brightness of it. And what you'll get is what appears in this this viewport over here. So you get what looks like a nice looking bauble. That's pretty much all there is to it. I mean, it's It's so easy to do. I'll just turn up the glossiness on that. Yeah, there we go. That's pretty good. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Now, for my finished render, I used, of course, I used purple and red, as you can see here. If I zoom in here, I used purple and red baubles. Okay. Now, what you could do, you could create a duplicate of this bauble and then make one purple and one red and then just duplicate it around the tree. But something I thought that you might want to learn, because I wanted to learn it, so I did it specifically just for this scene, is you can use a random node to use a material randomly. Okay, that's a really bad description. What it is basically is if you get, oh gosh, where is it? An object info node. Okay, you add an object info node. You can see the bottom input here says random. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this node and I'm going to show you how you can have the same object and let Blender choose randomly which color to assign to the bauble. Very, very clever. Okay, so I'm just going to duplicate these nodes here, and what I'm going to do is add in a mix shader. Let me go, oh, where is this thing? Mix. Oh, for goodness sake, where is it? Why does everything have to rearrange every time you use it? There you go. All right, mix shader, drag that in there. And then the factor input, if I put this random in there, and then with this one, because I've now just got the same colors, now I'm going to make this one red. So let's just turn this to a red. Yeah, let's go 100%. Let's go nice hue like that. Cool. So now check this out. If I go into rendered view mode, we have a purple ball, right? Now, if I just duplicate this a few times, what you'll notice is that they're slightly different colors. Okay? Which isn't really what we want. We want there to be like two very distinct looking colors, because what it's doing at the moment is it's giving us a blend between these different materials in this mix shader here, right? But it's giving us like random blends. Like, so it's giving us like, you know, maybe 20% purple, 80% red or something like that. But what we want is like one or the other. We want Blender to make up its mind, okay? So the way you do that is you use a color ramp node. If you drag this in here, and then if you set this interpolation to be constant, and then you just drag this in to be like halfway, like 50-50, then you will get that exact result. So now it's using basically 50-50. Half of it is going to be using this, and then half of it is going to be using this over here. Now, I'm sure that there is an easier way to set this up, and I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments on how to do it, because I know that I basically was just experimenting, and this is what I did. But it works, and this is a cool way you can do it. So going back into solid view mode, I'm going to select everything except the original bauble, and what I will do is bring in back our tree here. It's just a matter of just moving and placing it at the end of branches. Okay, so where's the camera? It's about there. Okay, so you want to hit Alt-D, and the reason you use Alt-D is that you want it to use the same object data in the new bauble. So if you wanted to like edit the bauble, I hate having to say that. If you wanted to edit it, like add something on the top, then you could do it because you've hit Alt-D instead of Shift-D, because it's now copying the object attributes. So a little tip there for you. And then it's just a matter of finding a branch and then hanging one from it. It's not rocket science. It's you can have a bit of fun with it, I guess. Virtually decorating a tree. Yeah. You know what's weird? When I was a kid, decorating the tree was like, it was such a treat, you know? Like, I remember once, I don't know if it was me or like my sister, but one of us was out of the house or something, and we just decorated the tree without her or without me. And it was like a big thing. Like, you decorated the tree without me. How could you? That's a tradition. I'm missing out this year, you know? It was such this big, you know, thing. And it was, you know, it was like it was a thing you look forward to, is decorating the tree. And then I don't know what happened. It was like almost overnight, like the next year. I just remember it being a chore, like like decorating the tree. I just couldn't think of like a bigger waste of time than putting up something in the lounge room only to tear it down again in a month, you know? It's just I don't know. I don't know why that happens to adults, you know? Like you see kids and they're so innocent and they're not jaded by the world yet, and you're like, "Ah, man, I wish I could have some of that in my life, you know? I wish I could see everything afresh and anew like a child does, you know, and just hang on to that." But you just can't. I don't know why. But as an adult, it's like you just you're smart. At least you like to think you are, and you learn things, you know, and things are never the same ever again, and you just cannot help but see the ugly side of like any situation, you know. So it's like, you know, when you're a kid and the government builds like a park next to your house or something, like a playground or something, and you're like a kid, you're like, "Oh, this is incredible, this is awesome." And then as an adult, you're like, is this seriously what our government is spending our tax dollars on? You know, it's stuff like that. And I feel like it just happened like immediately overnight. And when I was a kid, I promised myself like I would never become one of those adults, but I did. And it'll never be the same ever again. But anyways, look, I'm making a Christmas tree tutorial. Merry Christmas, everyone. And look how happy I am about it. Anyways, okay, so now when we go ahead and hit render, we should now see a nicely decorated, finished Christmas. Oh, wait, no. Before we render it, we got to put the star on top. Oh, the star. What a privilege that used to be in our family. Who gets to put the star on top? Oh, the days. This is how we're going to do it in Blender. We're going to use an add-on, okay? And this is in the add mesh options here. This is where I find like the coolest add-ons is right here. I find this is where the best ones are. You've got the window generator, pipe joints. But anyway, the one that I like is extra objects. Check this out. Extra objects. You check that, and then you go add mesh, extra objects. What? Look at all this stuff. Stuff that I reckon should be like already in Blender. And it's just here. Anyway, it's in this add-on. So the extra object I'm going to add is a star. Ta-da! And we have a star. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab those two edge loops right there. I'm going to hit S, Z, 0, enter, and there we go. We now have what looks like the star that is on top of everyone's tree. So because we've now got doubled vertices right there, what you want to do is remove those doubles. You can see the top there, it says remove 10 vertices, which is good. And I just want to rotate this so that it's just like that. And let's put this about there. What am I doing? Okay, it's sort of going all over the place now. And then at the bottom here, what you want to do is just put a cylinder. And this cylinder is going to be the part which is, you know, where it like, it sits on top, like it wedges onto that top branch of the tree or whatever. So you just create like this sort of like fan like that. And just delete that. And that's pretty much it. You can turn on smooth shading for that one. And let's make this, make them joined. And then with that, before you do anything else, you want to give it a bevel. And the reason you want to do that is because I found that the star, like having just these flat surfaces here, you miss out on a lot of like reflections. It looks like really bland if you don't have really smoothed off looking edges there. So I find, yeah, if you increase this bevel, yeah, just something smooth like that, it looks really nice. So anyway, so look at the size of the star. It's ridiculous. So I'm just going to scale this down. And in order to create like that top stalk, because there isn't one with this current setup, what I'll do is I'll just select our this guy right here, and this trunk. I'm going to duplicate that, and then hit P to make it its own separate object. And that's going to select the branches. Come on, See if I can actually get it. There we go. And I'll scale this down and I'll position it at the top of our tree to be about there. That's pretty good. And then I'll just join it with the branches. And because we've got this branch, because we're using that that weight paint group to define like which parts of the mesh actually get particles or whatever, what you need to do is just go to the vertex group here and just give it a value of 1, and then you will actually get little particles coming out of that top part right there. And that is pretty much it. Oh, it's way off center, so let's pull that back, and there we go. Okay, come on, why is it going so slowly? I guess I could turn off the particles. Yeah, there we go, that's a lot nicer. So that's the problem with big trees, I find. Having tried to create many different trees for the Nature Academy and whatnot, I find like there is a limit to how big a CG tree can be, because ideally you want really, really small leaves. But to do that, you need lots of branches and lots of leaves. And the computer physically just cannot do it. Like, it cannot cope with a real world tree. It just doesn't work. I don't know why. So all that stuff you see in movies of like what looks like trees as they fly over mountains, like I'm sure there's a lot of trickery in there. So it's just like a low poly tiny little tree or something, because there's no way they can render all those polys on one thing. Anyway, that's my little 2 cents. You got to give this a material. So again, I'm going to use the same mix shader. I'm going to combine diffuse. You know what I could do? I'll just copy this material right here. Let's go to the node editor. And let's just delete this random looking thing here. Probably would have been quicker to just do it all in the actual thing. But anyways, all right. And I want this to be a yellow goldish color. So that's the diffuse there. And then this is the gloss right there. And then you want this one to be, I guess you can make it the roughness. Like, yeah, I think I made my roughness like really sharp. But I think if you just turn it up to be a little bit smoother, it might look a little bit nicer. But anyways, that's it. I think we are now ready to go. So let's go ahead, give it a render with everything that we've now done, and let's see how it looks. All right, there you go. Finished. It actually looks better than I thought it would. That's not too bad. I mean, for such a finicky thing as, you know, using that add-on and everything else, it's actually come out quite decently. There's obviously a lot of things to change, you know, the tinsel and whatnot. I think the baubles are a little bit too big, too many lights and whatever, but overall it's not too bad. There's one thing I did say that you could do, is to make the Christmas lights glow, and we can do that in the compositor. So I'll just show you how to do that right now. Really easy to do. You remember that in the render layer settings, we enabled the material index, and we gave the light bulb material a pass value of 1. Okay, so what we can do with that is if we add in an ID mask, this little nifty little node here, which again is in converter ID mask, and then we take the index MA and plug that into the bottom of the ID mask there. If you don't have the index MA, you've got to check the material index right there and re-render it. And then obviously this number here, you just need to set it to the number that we gave the light bulb, which is of course 1. So if you have multiple objects, you obviously just give it a unique number. You can do whatever you want with it. Now, if we have a look at that, you can see that we've got just our Christmas lights in the background there. So what that will enable us to do is if we combine this with the original render and put this factor input into the top and then the render layer into the bottom like that, and then if I just make this black, what that'll do is it'll give us the original color of the lights as well, which is even better, like that. So now that we have got just access to the Christmas lights themselves, I can now go ahead and do whatever I want with them. So in this case, I'm going to go and add in, if I can find the thing, a glare node. And if I just drop that in here, you can see the effect that it has. Really, really cool, really easy, and I'm I'm going to increase the streak count to 12. That'll just give it a nice sort of look. And I'll turn up the color module to be 0.5 because I like that sort of old school camera look, you know, like Quentin Tarantino did in Django. Really heavy, almost like chromatic aberration sort of look. Anyways, so now we've got that glare. We obviously need to combine it with the original render. So we add in a mix node and just drag this glare node into the bottom input, and then take the input from the render layer and put that into the top input. And then what you do is that you set this to add, and then what you'll find is, if this actually, yep, there we go, finally it's loaded up. Now you can see we've got the glare over the top of our original Christmas tree. It's too heavy at the moment, so I'm turning it down to a factor of 0.3, and that looks pretty good. You could probably go higher if you wanted, but that's pretty much it. So that concludes this tutorial. I hope that it was of value to you. I hope that every Christmas you now know how to create a Christmas tree that you can put on your Christmas cards or in your Christmas scenes or anything like that. I hope you've learned a couple of things. And if you make something cool with it, especially if you make an entirely new scene and I don't know, put it in a living room or something like that, just post it in the comments below. I'm always interested to see what people make using the tutorials on Blender Guru. So if you make anything cool with this tutorial, please post it in the comments. It's greatly appreciated. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. That's a way to give me a little bit of thanks. And that's all from me. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time. Bye.